Ferenginar is like what heaven would look like if God was stupid. Beckett Mariner has been weathering a stemple for so long, it probably can't even self-seal anymore. And all of Grand Negus Rom's favorite baseballs are at his palace. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4, Episode 6, entitled Parth Ferengi's Heart Place. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, but some people may disagree. Written by Cullen Crawford, directed by Brandon Williams. We have a very special guest. We've got a legend in the house, figuratively. It is Mr. Mike McMahan.
Hi, thank you for having me, boys. Good to be back. Good to be back.
So great
Welcome
to have you.
back.
Love to be on a review of my own show. Hopefully you liked it.
We're liking all of it, I think, so far.
I prefer in a review that you recap the 22-minute episode over 2 hours. That's my favorite type of podcast. So please.
Well, then you're in luck because we've got all day.
Exactly.
Well, let's just jump into this. First of all, everybody knows Mr. Mike McMahan is the showrunner of Star Trek Lower Decks, and we are extremely honored to have him here. He's always very gracious with his time, and we super appreciate that. Question number one goes as follows. We've all seen the first 3 seasons of Star Trek Lower Decks. We're all wowed and tickled by it all. When you started the writer's room for season 4, what was the angle you were going for? Was there something new you wanted to add? Were you trying to step something up? Were you trying to add more Easter eggs? What was kind of that conversation like?
No, I sat down and I was like, guys, we're finally going to do it. We're going to add Stargates. And everybody was like, you can't do that. And I was like, never mind. Let's, no, I'm just, the Stargate people all just sat up and they were like, I'm sorry, really?
I'm listening.
There needs to be more semi-automatic rifles in Star Trek. Stargate has them all on lock. No, I said, originally for season 4, when we started, I like to come in with some stuff kind of planned out and then some loosey-goosey stuff that like we can figure out that'll be, because you don't want the whole thing locked down by me before I sit down with writers, because just like having more brains from different backgrounds is always just going to get you things you don't expect, which is better. But I knew that I wanted to promote them in season 4, the Warp Core 4, so to speak. And I knew I wanted to add T'Lyn to the mix more, but I thought we were going to promote them at the end of the season. And pretty quickly, Cirroc, I love the big hoop earrings, by the way. You look good.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Pretty quickly when we were breaking season 4, I was like, would it be weird and off-putting to make them get promoted at the end of the first episode of season 4 and then have to deal with it? And everybody was like, yes, that would be weird and off-putting. And I was like, in a good way. And so because it surprised us and it also surprises the characters, especially Mariner. And so, that was the shift when we started the season of who knows how many seasons of this show we're going to get. We might only, like, writing season 5, that might be our last season. You know what I mean? Like, things change, especially the industry is pretty wild right now. There's no guarantees and nobody's made any to me that we're going to get to do more than 5. So doing in 4 something that I was thinking of putting off and instead of just accelerating it, it was a bit of a gamble. But then by the time we were halfway through the season, I was like, this feels good. I like seeing the change. It still feels like the show. We get to see stuff with the characters that you kind of wanted to see them experience. Like, we didn't have to delay the gratification of that a little bit more. And it opened up a lot more storytelling that wasn't available before.
You mentioned T'Lyn's character, which we're really enjoying T'Lyn because of the dry humor. And was that the purpose or the reasoning behind adding that character for that kind of humor and having something to bounce off?
That was the benefit for sure. But I just love Vulcans. Like, Lower Decks loves Star Trek, right? And how can you have Star Trek without a Vulcan? Or if not a Vulcan, a Data, right? You need, and Cirroc, I'm very aware that you were clearly the Data Deep Space
Yeah,
Nine.
well, thank you very much.
Deep Space Nine, a data-free Star Trek show. But anyway, you guys have more Wayuns, which was good. But anyway, the adding that dry humor, like, that wasn't something I came up with. Like, we saw a lot of that with Spock. We saw a lot of that with T'Pol. I like a Vulcan who's not a villain, a non-Vulcan villain. You know what I mean? And I like a 100% Vulcan. Like, I think we've had a lot of human Vulcans, people who had like one parent that was human and one that was a Vulcan, and they're torn between worlds. So that's been covered a lot. But just a Vulcan that doesn't like people, like, that's a classic. Like, I like exploring that. And there's a lot of T'Pol in T'Lyn. I really like that character. And, you know, I think that, you know, Jolene Blaylock played her in a really cool way. So, like, you know, getting to do our own Vulcan and seeing how a Vulcan lower decker who isn't, you know, in charge of stuff and isn't second in command, you know what I mean, doesn't have the ability to just go and talk to the captain, and is in a position with less agency, like, that hadn't been seen as much, you know. And I love Tuvok, but like, Tuvok keeps it unlocked, you know what I mean? Like, Tuvok locks it down. Like, he's kind of a different vibe than T'Pol and T'Lyn. Like, you know, he's got a job to do and they're stuck in another quadrant. So, like, it was an opportunity to have a Vulcan that feels like you recognize her from Vulcans you've seen, but like plugging into these fast, jokey, loud comedy characters, but still getting to be Vulcan as a straight man, sort of as this, exactly like what you said, that style of kind of dry humor, like still humor. So I love writing lines for T'Lyn. It's so, you can hear Gabrielle's voice, like, when you're writing it on the page, and you're already laughing at, like, knowing how it's going to, like, dead stop for a second and then they're going to speed up again, you know. Like, it is just it's a blast to get to do. And I kind of want to crib it. I'm like, why am I not just writing Vulcans into other shows and just not calling them Vulcans? Like, it's so fun
totally
to have somebody who acts like this. Like, I think I'm like, moving forward, I'm just going to quietly add Vulcans to non-Star Trek shows, but just don't have them have pointy ears. Just have them be like, you know.
You're right.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you've been doing a theme also for this. Oh, sorry, Brian.
No, please go.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you have a theme for this season as well that's been a new kind of recipe for the mix, and that is having these really short segments either before or at the end of the episode where you have introduced this kind of alien ship wiping out other ships, Vulcan, Klingon, and all of the such. We've been enjoying those clips. Obviously, you're setting up something bigger for either the end of the season or perhaps next season. We're not sure yet.
And there's a koala in that ship that people are catching, by the way. What's going on?
You guys are just too spiritual seeing that koala. You know, like, you guys
we're just imagining.
Everybody's seeing a koala as too in tune. One day I'll admit what we designed that ship to look like, but it wasn't a koala. But I do love people are like, I see a koala. It's like, you see koalas everywhere. Yeah, I really love those, you know, those little moments. They are building towards later this season. All will be revealed. You know, it's a 10-episode season. I can only tease people for so long. There are little breadcrumbs. I've seen some people online get nudge close to seeing what we're up to, but not quite figure it all out, which is great. Those moments are purposefully modular to some extent, because I loved the Wage Douche episode. I loved getting to see other Lower Decks crews. And this was a way, without it taking over each episode, to get that little flavor every once in a while and be like, oh,
yes,
you know, an Orion crew, and you're going to get to see a Ferengi crew this week. You know what I mean? Like, it's just fun to be with them for a moment. It also replaced, you know, first season, and I think a couple times second season, we only have so many minutes on screen, right? So everything, even when we're doing a bit or having fun, it kind of needs to service the season, just because there's so many stories and the season's so short. So I took first season's modular cold open comedy bits and I turned them into, let's do those, but let's do them Wage Douche style on these different ships and have it all lead to something, so that we're still getting to like have a different modular moment, but also it leads to something, you know. And I've seen some people be like, oh, I get it. And I'm like, well, why don't you wait till the end of the season and see how it all comes together, and you might have a different appreciation for it. You know, there's two ways to watch Lower Decks. There's the first time, and then there's the second time, and they're totally different experiences each time, and that's going to be true for these modular openings too.
Second contact.
Yep. We're loving the characters when we see those crews and the way they razz each other. It's hilarious to see.
I know. It feels bad.
I've been stabbing people in the back long before.
It feels like you're having fun with stereotypes. Like we're watching, we're like, oh my God, that is such a Romulan thing to do.
Yes.
Or, oh, those guys are it's so fun.
It's so funny because we have like 3 lines to accomplish something, and it's like, all right, that means subtlety's out the window with those. So it's like, oh, there's Ferengi.
We love it.
They're like, prophet, like it's like,
yes.
But then when you see them all together, they're actually the blunt nature of the kind of like classic archetypical species we're seeing, and us heightening them, like especially the Romulans being like, I've been betraying before you were born. You know what I mean? Like, it's the archness of that stuff is actually hiding the subtlety that you'll see when you piece them all together at the end of the season. Like, it's kind of a magician lighting a flame in one hand, so they can palm a card in the other. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a little distracting in a good way, but it fits into the show, so like it's not standing out as being weird.
Yeah. It's working for me because it gives us just a little bit of a glimpse. I think Ryan said it best when he said, playing on the stereotypes, but it's in a funny way, and it's really amusing. But I wanted to ask you, actually, Ryan, you go ahead, and then I'm going to follow up mine.
Sure. I just want to point out, everybody listening in just on audio, Mike McMahan has a very sneakily hidden number 47 on his hat. Very cool little thing there. He's got a Shax in his background, and it looks like some kind of Star Trek plate. I'm guessing it might be a Tom Paris. Wanted to say people are loving T'Lyn and what she brings to the show. The lines are beautifully written, but also beautifully delivered. She adds such a great element, and you kind of touched on it a bit. There's a Geordie Bear. So wanted to just give major kudos there. But beyond that, well, I don't think she was even in this episode, but who were in this episode was Lita and Rom. I wanted to ask you, with regards to this episode, did you think, okay, it's time to visit Ferenginar, let's see who we can add to it? Or did you have a list of actors that you're like, we've got to figure out a way to get them incorporated? How did this all come about?
I mean, Cirroc will be able to back me up on this. I really love Chase Masterson. Like, I think just Chase is so talented, but she also has, like, I think more love in her heart than in anybody I've ever met. And it shines through at all times. Like, she almost, like, if you told me she glowed in the dark, I would believe it, because she's so sweet and genuine. And like, so I met Chase when I snuck into a Comic-Con party in 2011, and it was back when I was writing the TNG season 8 tweets. And I used to do this stupid thing where, and sorry if this is an old story, in hindsight, I'm like, I probably should have been arrested for this, but George R. R. Martin used to post on Instagram where, like, when he was hanging out at Comic-Con, and me and my pals would be like, all right, let's look in the background here. And then we would just go and hang out with George R. R. Martin. We would just appear and just be like hanging out and having a cocktail or whatever, wherever he was, because we would like go to Yelp and be like, oh, the background of that is he's at the top of the Hyatt or whatever. And we would just show up and be like, we were like in our 20s and we were assistants, and we're like, that's George R. R. Martin. Like, we were just losers, And like, in hindsight, it's a little stalkerish. So I apologize, George. I think maybe I freaked him out, and that's why he hasn't finished the books. But anyway, so one time we're hunting George R. R. Martin, and he's behind the Hilton Bay front, and we're like, oh, let's go to behind the Hilton Bay front. And we go, and there's like a tented party out back, and I'm like, I'm just gonna walk in, and they're like, dude, that's not our party, and I'm like, it's fine, it's Comic-Con. So I walk in looking like I belong, clearly don't belong. I look like a complete schlub. I've got like a Comic-Con badge and a side bag and dumb shit. And I immediately am like, holy crap, I've walked into the motherlode of parties. Like, this is every geek, like LeVar and Brent and Will and Chase and you know, like Neil deGrasse Tyson was standing there, and you know, the Mythbusters were there, and I'm like, what George R. Martin's there talking to like maybe I think he was talking to Peter Mayhew, because this was long ago, rest in peace. And I'm like, oh no, I may have crashed a party that was way out of my league. And I start talking to Will, and I was like, hey, I don't really belong here, but I write TNG season 8. I just want to say I'm a big fan. And he instantly was like, oh my God, you write TNG season 8? You need to meet LeVar and Brent. And I'm talking to them. And he's like, Chase, come here. And I'm talking to Chase. And then security came over and tried to kick me out. And Chase and Will were like, no, he's with us. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool of these two. Because I'm a dumbass. You know what I mean? Like, this is amazing. And then, so I had like the time of my life. I filled in producer Brad Winters, so I think you guys have met, the whole thing afterwards, because he had done something else. And he was like, I don't know if he was angry or crying, but he was upset that he had missed it. You know what I mean? Like, it was, you know, because that was like, we had never done any Star Trek stuff. And it was like a brush to just what we loved. And then like a decade later, I'm making Lower Decks, longest story ever. And I'm sorry, you guys can just fast forward this when you get to the editing. But I run into Chase at Star Trek Day like a year and a half ago. And I'm like, I like, she's there, we're at a party, and I go running up to her, and I'm like, Chase, you don't remember me? I'm the showrunner of Lower Decks, but the last time we met, I was crashing a party, and I was an assistant, and I still had hair, and I was like, you were so nice to me. Like, you were so genuine and so nice to me, and as a fan, but also as a writer, and somebody who works like, you are nice when nobody's looking. Yeah. Like, you are nice to everybody at all times. I love you. I love Lita. If I write an episode for you, will you be in Lower Decks? And she was so flattered and was so sweet. And I was like, look, animation takes forever. You're going to forget about this moment by the time your agent calls you to be like, hey, do you want to be in a cartoon Star Trek? But I promise you it's coming. So then that was the impetus for wanting to do this episode. Like, I needed to do something where Lita could return, that honored where she was at the end of Deep Space Nine, which obviously meant that I had to get Max. And I was like, I have to have Rom in. You know what I mean? And I was just like, it built from there, you know, and then it became a celebration of Ferenginar and trying to mislead to fans what I wanted to feel like. The Admiral and I had read a wiki about Rom, but didn't really understand his character. And then at the end of the episode, that's the reveal, is that we do understand the character. You know what I mean? And that's what Captain Freeman knows the whole time. And that it was all kind of inspired by not only Rom wanting to improve things for Ferenginar, but also him having seen what Nog had gone through with Starfleet and having a respect for the Federation because of it, kind of unspoken. That made sense to me. So, you know, wanting to do that, but also make it a Lower Decks episode meant, you know, trying to balance all that stuff. But that, long story long, is kind of the impetus for that.
Wow. She is an angel.
It's funny because when you were recalling that story, that actually reminded me of Mariner. I felt like you actually did a real life Mariner moment
totally.
To sneak into the party.
100%. 100%. I didn't end up getting stabbed or phased or anything, luckily.
Yeah, but still, you know, it worked out actually. And you're absolutely right about Chase. She's a wonderful, just a sweetheart. And I thought you really grabbed her voice and the kind of what she represents and stood for on DS9 in this episode. I thought, you know, she was the person that was, you know, very adamant about kind of running the show in her own kind of way. And I felt that there was a exposure of that in the dialogue, how she was talking about Rom and how she was negotiating with Starfleet. I really felt like you had the voice of Lita down packed in this episode.
We tried to give her that strength, right? Like, Lita's always stronger than she's going to be. And sort of the same thing with Rom. And them wielding that feels strong as well, like by the end of the episode. hopefully people don't turn off the episode and just start blogging right away. Blogging.
Do people blog? Is that a thing?
Nobody's gonna do that because nobody blogs.
Hey,
Nobody's gonna tweet it or Xing. Ugh.
that's what they do. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah,
Mike, I know
it.
you got to run, and we appreciate your time so very much. Before you go, can you give us a super quick tease for the remainder of season 4?
Ooh, there's good stuff coming. And you guys haven't even seen. You guys have up through 8, right?
Mhm.
You've seen through 8. So,
We have not seen up through 8, but we have up
No,
through
we
8.
have it. Yeah.
Okay. So, second half of the season gets. This is going to sound crazy. Second half of the season gets more Star Trek than we've ever gotten before.
Ooh.
I take a swing on some stuff that almost feels like a direct spiritual sequel to an episode from the franchise, that like you could watch the episode and then queue up this episode of Lower Decks and it would feel like they were literally, even though they were made years apart, that like it feels like it was kind of like, oh wow, they really picked that up. You know what I mean? And we've done that before, but to a greater extent than we've done before with this one. That's partially why I've held that one off. It's one of the final 2 episodes.
Wow, that's juicy.
Really, really epic last episode, like just, I know we've done that before, but like, I always want to do something we haven't seen before, and I'm really happy with it. And we have a really funny episode that honors the proud tradition of Starfleet officers getting trapped in caves. And
Yes.
Yeah.
The episode is
It's
titled
gonna be great.
Caves. And
Can't wait.
I'm really excited for that one. I love a good trapped in a cave episode.
Mhm.
Cirroc, did you ever get trapped in a cave?
Oh, he's done the
I've been
cave
trapped
stuff.
in a cave. Yes, I did Northern Battle to the Strong.
Yeah.
We were in caves.
Yes.
But I just want to say, Mike, before I let you go, we really have been enjoying this season. The addition of Talin's been great. Starting off with the Tuvix episode, I thought you hit the ground running, and it's been really fun to watch this season kind of develop. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more of what you're doing here at Lower Decks. Also wanted to highlight one really quickly thing.
Yeah.
You have managed to write a show that doesn't have the captain as the star of the show per se, and I think it's the only series, Star Trek series like that. So that is also kudos to you, Mike, for pulling that off in a successful way. So I just wanted to give you your praise there.
Thank you.
Very
hopefully you
successful.
still love the captain, even though it's not technically about her.
Well, she was great in this episode too.
She was, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, we love the captain, but we love the fact that you're writing this show in a way that really gives us all somebody to cheer for. And one last thing, also, I found myself in this episode cheering for the relationship between Rutherford and Tendi, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I've never seen myself cheering for an animated
shipping them,
couple
yeah.
as much as
Just do it. Come on.
I know.
So it's almost like you've captured the spirit of what they did with Odo and Kira, how I would yell at the screen and say, you guys get together already. So there's an element of that as well that I think you really
himself.
Yeah, right. Or Picard and Q.
The most
Totally.
famous couple in Star Trek. Yeah.
Hey,
so congratulations on that.
We got to
as well.
run,
So,
but this has been so much fun, and we really appreciate you always being so gracious with your time, Mr. Mike McMahan. Everybody at home, stick around. We've got way more great stuff. We've got Brandon Williams, the director of this episode, coming right back here on the other side. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
Who will be in Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5. Hopefully.
Yeah, right.
Maybe. Here's hoping. Look, we have a very special guest joining us right now. It is the director of this episode, as well as the director of episode 3 of season 4 and probably episode 9. But for purposes right now, we're going to talk about episode 6. It's Brandon Williams. How you doing?
Hi. Thanks for having me back.
It's so good having you. Thank you so much for joining us again. Let's just dive into this episode. This is the second episode that you have directed with Star Trek Lower Decks. How was this episode different than episode 3 in tone? Was it, just kind of more fun, more detailed? Was it more stressful? How is it different?
I think right off the rip, it was like, oh, this is a bigger like legacy episode, right? Because we're going to Ferenginar, and we're, we have Rom coming in and all this great stuff. And there was just less sci-fi concepts to keep track of. So in a sense, it was like more pressure in terms of we have to make sure we get this right for the fans and for everyone. And then like less pressure because there's no supercomputer who's actually good and not evil. And there's no weather changing every, 5 minutes and planets exploding and all that. So like it was kind of a nice change of pace, and we got to focus in on our characters a little bit more, which I really liked. So it's kind of like how everything works in animation, where you're just kind of thrown new challenges, and like, so it's not so much that it's like easier or harder, but like different.
Mm-hmm.
When you're designing the layout for Ferenginar, and putting these, I would say, Easter eggs here and there, I was trying my best to look at everything that I was seeing and find out what I was seeing. Loeb's Lodge, for example.
Yes.
And,
there were so many of those. Wait, let me see if I can find a few of them. All you can blank. I don't even know what I was supposed to guess from all you can blank, but I did guess one word, and I'm not going to say it. Sluggo Cola acquire pour which is like, that was hilarious. That means acquire for men. There was Uncle Quark's Youth Casino, which was also fantastic. Loeb's Lodge, Maximum
young.
Umok's Rub Dungeon. Anyway.
Yes.
It's funny. Ferenginar is tough because really there's only the one like matte painting from the original from DS9,
right?
And then there's a handful of interiors from basically just Quark's house, though, essentially. And then I think there's the there's like one of the grand like auditors or something. There's like one other like grand building, and so we kind of had to build everything off of that. And I had a personal mission to make it like, I was trying to have them put a little Latinum coin in everywhere they went. I was like, I want and most of them stayed in, but it was really hard to do because it was like, we can't like derail this episode to feed my little, whim of like, I think it's funny that everything they do, everywhere they go, they have to like clink one of those little little Latinum slots.
The for-profit toilet.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Oh, and there was a machine that sells you the things that you need to it's like,
well, what their slogan is? We went through a lot of shit to make money off this.
Okay. Yeah, right.
Well, Ferengi's keep it on brand. So
yes.
It was like fun. So we were kind of getting to build out that world though for the first time.
Yeah.
Which was really exciting. And you sort of wish like, I like, part of me was like, I wish they were doing some big adventure on Ferenginar, but at the same time, I'm so happy that it's like contained to the characters, because that's what we all come for, right? It's like these characters are so great, and when they're interacting with like legacy characters, that adds like a whole nother layer of depth. And so like, as much as I wanted to like explore and have like an adventure, sort of like when they went to Orion in was that 404. Like they got to go and check out all these new places, and we haven't seen much Orion. It was like the same kind of thing, but I was like, yeah, but we get to focus on our characters, and that's ultimately, I think, for the best, especially with our A plot, I guess. I don't know, the A and the B plot sort of are competing for attention.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, this was just a delight because of going to Ferenginar. That I think that would be the big highlight for us. The whole museum of haggling had me laughing. Just little stuff. The whole culture of Tindy and Rutherford trying to fake being together, even though they really like each other. I love that concept as well. I thought it played very well in this episode.
That was adorable. Loved it.
Yeah.
And Cirroc, I'm sure you and I aren't the only two people that are shipping the hell out of them right now.
Well, yeah, this one was kind of our chance to explore that, I think. And it was the hardest part of the whole episode, was all the the acting, and like we went over like multiple passes of just trying to like before. I mean, we're talking before we even get to animation, which they are really bringing this to life. And there's some really good wacky animation I really loved in this, especially Parth. But like even in boards, we were like, okay, like how, like let's have them close to each other, and like, oh, how do we make them nervous about everything that's going on, because they think it's going to be fun, and then quickly they're in over their heads, right? And just like trying to like nail that story even in the boards, because like it's like if you didn't believe it in this early pass, like you won't believe it later when it's anime, even though animation like brings so much life to it. I was like, we need to nail this. And it was definitely the hardest part of the whole episode, was just like nailing that.
Was it dialogue you mean, or just,
yeah, like serving it, like, using our little, like, because the script says what the script says, and that's great, and that's like the first layer of getting us to where we need to be. But then like we have to reinforce all of it with their body language, because a lot of times through this episode, they're kind of saying one thing and feeling another, and like that's where we come in, and we get to be like, okay, how do I, like, this is the line of dialogue, but really they're really nervous about this, or they're this, and we had to really be careful and go over every like pose in detail and be like, all right, like, hopefully we're nailing it, so that we give everything to the animators to really like bring that, because there's subtlety in this one. A rare occurrence for lower decks. So
that's a really interesting thought of how difficult it must be to translate subtle body language that shows the subtext of what's actually going on in an episode. It's got to be so hard to translate that from the page to drawings to animation. We can do it, as humans, we can do it. We know how to like do little things and all. But how do you do that through animation and not make it look over the top or obvious?
Right.
So you're saying that was the most difficult aspect of this. What were those conversations like? Were you trying to make it like more and more subtle, or were you actually just being like, okay, Johnny, stand there and act this way, okay, and then like taking a sketch and be like, okay, how do you work that out?
Well, thankfully I have a big mirror right on my closet, so I could actually just like turn and look and be like, okay, how can it? And I think that luckily some of the board team was very excited to get this episode and to have this. I think a lot of storyboard artists, especially in animation, like just kind of live for these moments. So that aspect wasn't too hard, because like once you give it to them, like, what, a relationship, subtle acting, finally. But it was like a dial, right? So you have to imagine, like, as we do our first pass, like we sort of interpret the script and we're like, okay, we think this is how it should be. And then we get, our feedback from everyone, right? From Barry, from Mike, up down the line, or up the line there. And everyone is sort of like, oh, this part here, it's like too much, or, oh, we didn't quite nail it over here. And then we have to go, okay, so like now this needs to be like a bigger, more obvious pose. And then this over here, we need to like bring it back a little. And it's like kind of like just turning that dial. And trying to like fine tune it to where we're giving the animators everything they need to know to really like bring it to life. Because it was one of those things, and this happens again in a future moment that we'll get to, where it was like, we know this is going to work in animation, like we know it's going to work, but like everyone has to put a little bit of trust and faith, that like, because it's like not all the little subtleties are there in the boards, because we're limited how many drawings we can do. But we all know and we all have to just kind of like, put our hopes and dreams in the animators, and they did amazing in this, and they did amazing in the episode I'm foreshadowing here a little bit. But sometimes you just have to like put that trust that it's like gonna work.
Brandon, quick question. I wanted to ask you one about the Ferengi soap opera, cop drama shows. How much fun was it working on that? Because I thought that you could do the whole episode just on that itself.
I'll tell you, that's one we had too much fun with, because it's actually cut down. It's like the first place you make cuts, right, when you're running a little long. And like, because we have the cop landlords, which is the most Ferengi concept.
The cop landlord. Yeah, you just signed a lease, dirtbag.
And like,
I was writing
those
lines. It was just hilarious.
I love the your pet's over 26 pounds, or he was 20 pounds when I got him. They like pulls the phaser out of the little pouch. Like that was a little addition that we kind of got to later.
You just surrendered your deposit and your life.
I really like, because we wanted to do the different vignettes to show the different channels, right? We had the commercial, we have the cop drama, we had this sort of office romance, but that cop drama was so funny. It was so hard not to just like, let's just do that. And we had a few other little sequences and like chases and stuff that we had to you just have to cut it down because it's just for fun, right?
It was so good though. It's so good. I wanted more.
We lost ourselves in that one a little bit for sure, for the same exact reason, because you're just like, some of those lines are so ridiculous, and you're just like, oh, man, like, what else can we do?
Yes.
That's like a quick. That's a quick. Yeah.
No, sorry. Please finish.
I was gonna say that's like one of those places though where you can get into like asset overload really quickly, because like it sounds easy, like, oh yeah, we'll just do this. And now I think about it, even when I'm watching anything really. But like if you have TVs in the background, you have to like come up with that footage, right? So like we're making this little cop show, we're making the commercial, and that's all backgrounds, characters, animation. That's basically like full, like its own world that just for these little gags. So we had to be somewhat conscious of that and like make it, you
don't have to. You get to add those. That's got to be like, it's got to be one of those things where you start off, oh, we got to just add this little thing, but then you like really start getting into it, and you could just let your mind go. I did want to ask you, because we talked about this for a second before we hit record on this segment, but when we were talking about Mariner and Cirroc says, hey, what's eating Mariner? And we don't really know yet. And you said you didn't really know when you were directing this. So the question is, how do you approach directing a situation or a character or a storyline that you don't really know the ending of? Like, how do you tiptoe that line?
Yeah, it was difficult. The first thing you do is you ask, right? You ask Mike, like, hey, I know we haven't gotten that script yet or whatever, based, or haven't read it yet, but like, what is it that's kind of eating Mariner? And he'll sort of guide us, because like sometimes, not everything is completely set in stone, and then but other things are. Like, I know they usually have like big goals for each season. They sort of like work all that out in the beginning. So it's kind of the first thing is like, you always ask, right? You just try and get some insight as best you can. And so we had just enough to go off of to sort of like, but I just didn't know the exact details yet. It was kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, you're going to find out soon. It's going to be great. And everyone will find out, and it's going to be great. But you sort of just have to look at where you're at in the season as it is, and there's not really, like, we know something is bothering her about being promoted, right? So I just sort of took that and said, okay, there's something in her past. We know from previous seasons that she would get promoted and then demoted on purpose. So I'm like, okay, there's something about the responsibility. And so I just kind of start to like, I go off of, the guidance I was given, and just sort of go, okay, and just make up my own little headcanon and hope it kind of works out. Because as long as we hit the emotional moment, and really what I focused on was just like how her and her friend, right, were sort of like had this rough evening, because I figured like if we serve that moment, then the underlying tension will sort of just come through automatically for us. But it was tough for sure, because I was like, what is it? What exactly is it? And I had some guidance on it, but they weren't 100%. I think they knew, I'm sure Mike and all of them knew. And it's not like they were keeping stuff secret. Everyone's just busy, right? And like sometimes it can be hard to be like, oh, well, like they'll give us the broad strokes of what, but it's like, I'm not going to describe to you this entire thing that's going to be explained in this entire, this episode later, because you just don't need it for this moment. It's like, all you have to do is serve like this emotion, and you're like, cool, got it. Like, let's do it. And that's kind of the fun too, is to just sort of, I get to, oh yeah.
No, I want to ask you, Brandon, is it my imagination, or has Ransom's character evolved over these last 4 seasons? Because I feel like he started out in the more vain, self-centered lane, and has now kind of evolved to still have some vanity, but also a little bit more compassion, I would say, for his crewmates. So is that my imagination, or is that something that is actually purposeful?
Well, I think it's very purposeful for sure. Like you can kind of see the layers are being pulled back and like you're kind of like realizing, oh, this is why he is Freeman's first officer, right? Because at first, like you said, he was very like, I think that's typical also is like a lot of side characters are sort of one note for at first, and then as you move through the story, you're able to kind of like peel back the layers and like they become less of a joke and more of a fully formed character. And I imagine that Ransom was probably the idea of his character was known the whole time, but just wasn't like given away. It's kind of my like because I don't know exactly 100%. I know for sure he is evolving like as we move through, and he's one of my favorite characters too. So because of that evolution, like to see him go from being like, oh yeah, tear my shirt off and like, you know, do the fight. Yeah. But I think we have to remember he saves. I mean, he essentially keeps Mariner out of danger, right? So like right in the beginning, there's already a little hint at like who he is as a character, and his relationship with Mariner is kind of growing throughout each season that we get. And I hope it continues to go. Like I really want to get a full Ransom episode in the future. That would be wonderful, and I would love to get to do it.
Whoa, close, like a flashback Ransom episode where we find out what made him such a glorious douche that we love so much.
Because he's very capable, right? Like he gets the job done. And
no, he's becoming somebody I'm actually liking. In the beginning, I didn't like him as much because I thought he was just the jerk guy who was always like, look at me. And now I'm starting to say, hey, you know what? He actually thinks about other people other than himself. And I think that makes him somebody that I like more because of that. You know, it's like, oh, he's not all about him. It's also about developing other people and helping in their growth and development. So I see that now as an aspect to his character. I didn't see that before. And so, yeah, I feel like he's growing in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
especially
Brandon,
with Mariner, right? Yeah.
I know we only got you for a couple more minutes here, but can I please ask you the following question, which is, personally, this was a very fun episode, not just because we got to see Lita and Rom, who are absolute angels in this world, the actors that portray them, Chase Masterson and Max Grodenchik, and we got to see Ferenginar. We got to have a ton of laughs, and we got to see Rutherford and Tendi act like they're not in love, but then at the very final scene, they're basically humping each other in a Jeffries tube. So it was just a ton of fun. But I wanted to ask you, what was the highlight of this episode for you, whether it was behind the scenes or whether it was a line? Was there something that really jumped out when 30 years from now, when you look back at this episode, you're going to say, the best part of that episode was?
That's tough to pick. There's so many moments. I think my favorite moment is the hard cut to Boimler at the end, where we sort of forgot about his story, like the D plot. Like I know that is like totally outside of everything that is cool and great about the episode, but like he's in there, he's kind of having the vacation that like I would probably have, where I'm just like, you know, like I need to just be in the hotel room and like I just need that like mental break. Right. So he's stuck in there, and we sort of, because like all this great stuff happens. You got this, the Tendi and Rutherford story, Mariner's having like fights and going through it, you know, and then we've got the negotiation with Freeman, and like you purposely kind of forget Boimler, even though he has those big like memorable moments. But then at the very end, Ransom just being like, wait, where's Boimler? And just that hard cut to him is like, oh, I'm sorry. And then like Ransom's like proud of him for like you said, you know, we're kind of seeing more of Ransom's like, yeah, I'm glad you actually like took a break. But just that hard cut is one of and it was served so well. Like I thought we did a good job in boards, but seeing the final animation, I was like, this is so
we got to see the Ferengi whip finally.
Yeah, the whip. That was the best part.
And he has that line.
He's like, I've called the local police to come get you. Yeah.
Just go limp, son. That was the best line. I mean, that might be my favorite line of the episode too. I know it's like it's all the way at the end. It has nothing to do with the big moments of the episode, but that was one of my favorite bits. It's just to have him be like, "Just go limp, son," and then he like comes in and you got all the screaming and the whipping. That was so fun.
Yeah, that was great.
Mhm.
Definitely enjoyed that. And then the moment he looks like he's all strung out, from ODing on TV.
Oh, the bloodshot eyes and everything.
Yeah,
So
underpants. Yeah.
I
Well,
audibly laughed out loud when I saw it.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Like I was
I
like,
mean, that's always good if you can actually laugh at the finished product, considering you've seen it 50 times in various different stages of production.
yeah.
And by the way, the line where Colin wrote this episode, Colin Crawford, the line where someone says, "Yeah, the Cerritos, the horniest and least romantic." I was like, "That's the Cerritos."
I think we've proven that time and time again.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's official.
Yes.
I love that.
That definitely does not describe our show. We are very wholesome and normal and extremely romantic. But Brandon, we really appreciate you taking the time today, as you did for episode 3. And we would love to have you back for episode 9, because we keep hearing a lot of murmurs about episodes 9 and 10. Everybody's just going like, "Oh, just you wait. Just you wait." And we're like, we have to wait. We don't have a choice.
It's going to be worth the wait. I promise those two. It's really a lot of things are going to come together, and I'm very, very excited. Very proud of that episode also. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, you don't have to throw up in my mouth twice.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. One of the best lines ever. Good job. That was perfect. Look, everybody, stick around. We've got a final segment to put a button on this awesome episode. But for now, we want to say thank you very much to director Brandon Williams. Very much looking forward to the rest of the season. We really appreciate you and your work. Thank you so much. We will be right back, everybody. Stick around on The Seventh Rule. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cirroc Lofton's The Seventh Rule.
Yeah, right. Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week. A lot of fun ones. Grand Negus Rom says equality and hospitality are more profitable in the long run. There is now an updated portable version of the Genesis device. Ferenginar is beginning the process of joining the Federation. Beckett Mariner has been weathering a stem-bolt for so long, it probably can't even self-seal anymore. Let's be honest. Travel guide duty is mostly visiting bars. Ferenginar is like what heaven would look like if God was stupid. Ferengi public libraries go hard, and all of Rom's favorite baseballs are at his palace. Lots of good ones. So, Cirroc, finally, we can sink our teeth into visiting Ferenginar, seeing two of our favorite people. I was going to say humans, but one plays a Ferengi, the other one plays a Bajoran. How cool was it for you seeing and hearing your friends in this episode?
Yeah, I thought it was very special. I really like to hear Max and Chase doing their thing. Max, he has this thing that he does with his voice where he plays this really kind of, naive, almost, kind of gullible character, but he's the opposite of that. So it's really great how he plays that. And he still did it this time with this voice that he used for this particular episode. And I also like the growth in Lita's character. I mentioned a little bit of that to Mike, but I thought that she showed a lot of growth as well, as far as, being a leader as the first lady of Ferenginar, and managing both being with Rob and also having these added responsibilities of being the first lady. So I liked the episode all together, but it was especially nice to hear them reprise their characters.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I kind of heard a couple things in Max's voice that I didn't recognize. Like I feel like the who's the person? It's like an audio director or something like that. There's kind of like a secondary audio director. I can't remember what they call that person, but somebody was able to pull something new out of Max a little bit. Like there were a couple times where he did like a couple fast laughs, like "huh" or something, and I was like, "Oh shoot, he's still pulling out some new tricks," or they're pulling it out of him. So that was really fun to hear, you know, a little bit of an expansion of the role and an expansion of his skills. And I thought that Chase really, you know, her character was really shining in this episode. Lita was great. You know, she's come so far, so has Rom, and this is them really just shining in their roles as leaders of this planet, of this Ferengi alliance. Really loved that. I love that there was a female My Hardu, right? No, was it My Hardu? Yeah, My Hardu was that tall guy, right? I forgot what those aliens are called. But overall, this was one of the best episodes I've ever seen of Lower Decks. I really loved it. We've covered so much with these, with Mike McMahan and with Brandon Williams, but I just kept laughing. This is the most notes I've ever taken. There was the Maximum Umox Rub Dungeon. Got non-appearance mentions for Honus and Nurse Wesley. I don't know. What were your biggest laughs today? Because I got a million.
Oh, yeah, I had a lot of laughs. One of them was the bust of Good Fortune and the bill for the bust of Good Fortune. I thought that was hilarious because, you know, you give somebody a gift and then you also give them the bill for the gift. That was funny for me. I mentioned earlier about Cerritos being the horniest and least romantic crew. That had me laughing. The idea of the travel guide duty, I thought that was another clever, just, you know, the way Mike brings these ideas that are normal, like everyday life stuff. You watch these Rick Steves travel guide shows, or these Anthony Bourdain goes around and does, you know, restaurant tasting and stuff like that. So these travel shows and the idea of traveling and going to bars, mostly bars, some museums, but mostly bars. Another kind of troll that I thought was great in this episode. The awkwardness between Tindy and Rutherford, A1. I think they nailed that as well, because they were playing it like, hey, no, we're totally fine with this. And then they realized, no, we're not totally fine with this, when we, you know, kind of.
They were getting saucy because they weren't just like acting. Tandy was talking about like walking around with no top on, and they were like, were humping in the Jeffries tube later. And then, you know, like it wasn't just getting romantic. It was getting steamy. And, you know, and then they had like the little anime rosy cheeks pop up, which I thought was a funny addition there. Here's something.
We got married at a wedding. That was Rutherford's line. That had me
very believable, Rutherford. You nailed that one. There were a lot of little Easter eggs as well. Like they mentioned Moab 4, which was in the TNG episode, The Masterpiece Society. Don't remember too much about that, but we will be covering that shortly on our other podcast, of course, once we get
I wrote
to
that down because it made me laugh, even though I didn't know what Moab 4 was a reference to. But when he said it's like Moab 4 inside the dome versus Moab 4 outside the dome, and he said, well, you had to be there. That was another funny line. I didn't know what the reference was, but just the fact that, you know, you had to be there type of moment made me laugh.
I think that there's also a shuttlecraft Moab, if I remember correctly. I feel like in Next Generation, there is a shuttlecraft Moab. I'll have to look that up, but I will say that Moab is actually just about the most amazing and beautiful place I've ever seen in my life in southern Utah. Unbelievable. Arches National Park there. So when I think of Moab, I don't know what this planet Moab is, or the shuttlecraft must be named after it. But when I hear the word Moab, I just want to go back to southern Utah because it was freaking incredible.
I thought Moab was short for mother of all bombs, but
Yeah, it wasn't it?
Yeah, when they said they dropped a Moab, that's what I think they did that in Afghanistan or something.
I think it was like Desert Storm, where everybody was like, yep, Storm and Norman Schwarzkopf or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, mother of all bombs.
I think you're right. I'd forgotten about that. You see, Cirroc, that's the difference between you and me. I think about beautiful things when I hear the word
yeah.
But yeah, I loved the relationship between Tendi and Rutherford, and we've definitely covered how much we are both shipping them. Mariner was cracking me up. I liked it when Ransom was like, "Hey, Lieutenant Junior grades. I mean, Lieutenants, Juniors grade." That's very funny because we never know how to say that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Ransom, it's funny because he's starting to remind me of Gavin Newsom. It's really weird, but yeah, she says something like, "You're so handsome and nice," or something that.
Well,
that
it's
was
probably because that time that Gavin Newsom ripped off his shirt and showed off his tasty rock hard 6-pack abs. That was pretty sweet.
Yeah, there's something about him that reminds this episode that just like Ransom's kind of the Gavin Newsom of this. This
Everybody in the comments below, let us know on a scale of 1 to 10 how much Commander Ransom reminds you of Gavin Newsom. And if you're from like Austria and don't know who Gavin Newsom is, then just tell us who he does remind you of. Just anybody. I will say that the highlight, like for me, beyond Rom and Lita, the part that I was just like, this is such a beautiful and happy and unexpected moment, was recreating or kind of a spoof off of the Las Vegas Star Trek experience at the Star Trek.
I was going to ask, yeah, that was my question for Mike. I wanted to know, did they base the Quarks Federation experience? It has to be
100%, because it looked the same. They actually got the layout, and they had the Enterprise and Voyager flying above, hanging above, just like it was exactly the same deal. And it had Next Generation music playing. Like for a moment there, I felt like I was home back at the experience that closed in 2008. And it was just such a great addition. And then they had the guys in disguise or in costume pretending to be the Ferengi pretending to be a Vulcan with the bowl cut. That was, we should have brought that up with Mike. That was the most beautiful moment for me, that somebody's finally paying homage to, one of the places that I have the fondest memories of in my lifetime.
Me too. And ironically, it made me feel like I was there. Like even though I'm watching an animation, I felt like I was brought back to that spot. I had a little bit of nostalgia when I was looking around for things that I would recognize. Mm-hmm. Particularly, they had a souvenir shelf towards the entrance or exit or whatever you'd say.
And it had for that. It had some of the decorations, if I remember correctly, that the Hilton experience used to have, which it had like the Mugatu, the Guardian of Forever thing. There were like a few things in the background there that I was like, they really just modeled this after the Star Trek experience, but it's just run by Ferengi, wearing Vulcan wigs. And I'm going to definitely go back and rewatch that. And then we can order our Deanna Troi ring, onion rings of Beta Z, I think it was called, or the Hamburger, or the Vulcan Mind Meld drink, or the Warp Core Breach, the Borg Cube. I remember that whole thing. I lived there, man. Or I could have.
I think I had a jambalaya or something on that menu. Something. But yeah, that was a nice callback to the Star Trek experience. Um, there was also the the different rules of acquisition in this episode. I thought that was cool. I was waiting for the seventh rule to be brought up at some point. I was like, hey, that would have been a cameo for us.
That would be
But
fun.
they brought up the eighth rule, which is small print leads to large profits. I thought that was a nice,
Mhm.
little shout out in there. But
And they
yeah, this
also
episode was great. It just had everything you could possibly really want.
they had a second rule of acquisition as well. Where was it?
Yeah, number 62.
Yeah.
The greater the risk, the greater the profit, or something to that.
Yeah. Yeah, there it is. Rule of acquisition number 62. The riskier the road, the greater the profit. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
That would be so fun though, if one of these episodes does have the seventh rule. They'll be like, the seventh rule will be like, huh? And they'll be like, of acquisition. Oh. Yeah. We lean in for that moment and expect it.
I was looking for it in this one. Didn't we see this terraforming thing in another episode of something? I could have sworn.
Which, the Genesis device?
Yes, the Genesis.
If I remember correctly, the Genesis device was from Star Trek 2. Okay. Is that right? I'm gonna have to look that up. And right now the nerds are yelling at me so hard. But yeah, it was from Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. But that's what it's from. And I don't remember if it was also touched on in Star Trek 3. I have to rewatch those movies at some point. But anyway, that's what it's from.
So it's from Star Trek 2, but it was also the idea of terraforming planets. I thought was also in the Next Generation, like season 1, where there was that one scientist guy who came aboard Enterprise to terraform planets, right, or do something.
True. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I great callbacks. One thing that these guys at Lower Decks, Mike McMahan and his team, have been doing is bringing us more callbacks than ever before on all shows combined.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just there's callback after callback. Basically, every episode is an homage to something that happened in the past in some way or another. So that's what this show has really found a niche for. It's just being able to do that over and over again in this comical way. Grand Nagus Rom swinging his staff like a baseball bat, like it's just little things that you would never be able to get away with unless it's in an animated form. So they're taking advantage of their ability to do so much more with animation.
Speaking of callbacks, I haven't had this many callbacks since my car's warranty was expired. Okay. Did you ever get those calls? Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Here was something our good friend Dr. Marie Segal found for us, and it was that dog here from the original series, the dog with the horn. Looks a little cuter in this one though, but you see the dog with the horn here. Mm-hmm. That's definitely an original series alien. Back in the original series days, they're like, just put a horn on a fluffy dog and call it an alien. Let's just do that. And then another thing that she caught for us, which I completely missed, was this guy's backpack is like the fabric or the design of one of Quark's old vests, right? Look at that. Looks like Quark's vest. Very good catch there. Good attention to detail by the animators there. So, look, I also want to point out very quickly, everybody, that you can listen to this podcast wherever podcasts are found under the Seventh Rule 2. The Seventh Rule itself, we review Deep Space Nine and Next Generation episodes. All new Star Trek episodes are reviewed under the name The Seventh Rule 2, wherever podcasts are found. So please make sure you subscribe to that. You give us a 5-star rating, and a nice review would be great as well. So check that out, please. Cirroc, any final thoughts? We had the Dominion War Memorial. We had a sober farewell to lost prophets. It was like a war memorial of prophets.
Yes. We also had that show, Will They, Won't They? And that was it was another one of those animated Ferengi shows that was had Boimler's attention. I thought that was funny as well. I saw 10 Forward a little in the background at the Quarks Federation experience. There was a 10 Forward in the background there somewhere.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. And lastly, I'm going to say I didn't, obviously enjoyed the episode. But lastly, I love the line about the heart being the universal symbol of love. It was Rutherford brought it up. But yes, it's like everywhere you go, they use that heart. And I thought that was a clever kind of thing to acknowledge. So yeah, I loved the episode.
Yeah, I've often wondered about that because, like, what do we, love? I don't know, just maybe because it just feels like it comes from there or something. But if I remember correctly, reading a long time ago, that way back in the day, they used to think that the center of love was like their liver or something like that. If I remember correctly, people in the live chat or in the comments below that have more knowledge on this matter than I do, please let us know. Where did I read this? And what was this? something 1,000 years ago or whatever. They used to think that the center of like love and the soul and stuff was like your liver or something like that. Which sounds silly to us, but to them, maybe the heart sounds silly. They're, well, where their blood is? That's stupid. Anyway.
Yeah, I wonder what that liver symbol would look like when you draw it.
Yeah, it would be way less cute than a little heart. It would be like a leaf-shaped, ugly slug.
Yeah.
But look, people that are not leaf-shaped or ugly, but that are the center of our love are as follows. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan.
Arucan.
Our good buddy Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie Blender, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, Dequeue, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason the Outrageous Okun. Thank you all very much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I honestly feel worn out after watching it and laughing at this episode all day. It feels like I feel like I need a nap. This was great stuff. That's it for us. Please make sure you like this video. Give us a nice comment in the comment section below. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel and you hit the bell icon for notifications. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate all of you. And until next time, always remember the 7th rule.